The last thing we looked at was the role of a network of support in academic success. We broke it down into 3 categories. One's a school support network, individual relationships, and the outside agency, which in our case would be the after-school program. What schools need to understand is that grades are great, but teachers really need to help the student develop a positive self-esteem. If students aren't engaged, they're going to, especially when they're struggling, they're going to fall further and further behind. And teachers can and do affect student engagement. Finding different projects to grade students on, not making everything a paper and pencil quiz, including projects and whatnot, can help schools help the student from a low-income background become more successful. The other thing that some studies found is that teachers have got to maintain and demand high expectations. It's okay for them to extend a deadline because there is a certain amount of disorganization that will come from students from a low-income background. But when we extend a deadline, is the teacher still maintaining high standards? Having high standards and high expectations, it promotes self-esteem, it builds confidence, and in the end, it increases academic performance. If we go back to what the student's mentality is, they're just going to do the best to get by, and if schools and the teachers aren't holding them accountable, it's a recipe for just continued poor academic performance. Again, this impacts the Young Scholar Program because when teachers don't hold high standards, it really undermines the importance of academic success, and it devalues the role of a Young Scholar Program's impact on academic achievement. Another thing we looked at were individual relationships, and there was a question posed: when students had been in poverty and successfully reached the middle class, what was who impacted their success? And 9 out of 10 times it was a person. It says here they made a suggestion or took an interest in them as individuals. So we must look at how individual relationships impact student performance. And we're talking about successful teaching, and the people that come and help, the tutors and the mentors that come and help the Young Scholar Program, they're not necessarily teachers, but because the program is really an extension of the school day, they take on that role. And they can use their experience and their life lessons to help build up a student that's here. Knowing something about the student is important. Showing some knowledge of what they're doing, what's important to them. What are their interests? What kind of books do they like to read? What is some activity they like to do? Do they like to cook? Do they like to bake? Christmas is coming up. Thanksgiving's coming up. Is family important to them? Addressing the needs of the student. Again, treating them as individuals, taking away all the baggage and taking away all this other stuff that surrounds them when they come here, and just treat them for who the person they are at the time that they're here. And really, because there are many absentee parents, the tutor might be the only supportive adult in their life. And it's important that there's some trust built and character development and a relationship where that student knows when they come here that somebody cares about them as an individual, is going to take the time to show understanding and help bring them to the next level. So how this affects the Young Scholar Program? Good mentor and tutor matches are an important role, and with that we need to offer opportunities to develop that relationship. Sometimes we're so focused on the here and now and the homework needs to be done. Are we giving the relationship an opportunity to develop? So the last part of what we're looking at is the outside agency, which would be the after-school program. And research has found that after-school programs, they provide additional structure and resource support. Students will tell you they don't want structure, but as somebody's taught me, students crave structure. And it's important that if you don't believe that they want structure, all you have to do is change something. If you change something that they've been doing for months and months and months, all of a sudden that structure is very important. After-school programs can provide one-on-one attention, and again, they're extending the learning opportunities for at-risk students. Research has found that there's 3 common elements among successful schools. Number 1 is the use of money and ability to access funds. Schools and after-school programs have understood that there's a cost involved to these programs, and it's important to have the money available to fund the program, to recruit and hire staff, to provide the necessary resources. Second thing is the team approach. It's important that the staff maximizes their talents and is creative in coming up with solutions and is able to multitask, and that they're all on the same page. And the final thing is the use of focused goals, and that's what we're going to stress today. When you have a focused goal, everything you do needs to be compared to that goal. So it's automatically built-in criteria. If we want to do this, okay, that's a great idea, but how does it get us to where we want to go? By keeping the end result in focus, it gives us a sense of direction, especially when we're running around putting out fires. So we need to be goal-oriented and focus-driven on what is the impact that we're trying to have. What are the goals and the core values of the program? There are some drawbacks to the after-school program. As we know here, attendance is voluntary. If the student doesn't come, it's hard to make an impact. We're limited in capacity sometimes. If we don't have enough tutors or the right ratios, or all the desks are full, we might have to turn somebody away. Also, there could be a disconnect between the school curriculum and the after-school program. And for example, a lot of these students need extra skill building. But if we're giving them the extra skill building on long division, but the test on Friday is in fractions, it's great that we're doing the skill development, but ultimately the academic part, that's not helping them with the fraction test on Friday. So it's important that the school and the after-school program work together to provide the necessary support. Another problem is not having enough skilled adults. If there's not enough adults, it results in triage, burnout. We're always just trying to get by, we're just trying to get through the day. And in actuality, that can make the situation worse. Because when adults are coming in and out of their lives, they don't know what the rules are, they don't know what the structure is again, or the expectations. It's really hard to make changes when there's this constant shifting of adults in their lives. There are ways to increase the value of the after-school program. Again, working closely with schools and parents, facilitating effective use of family networks, helping them enhance school monitoring, making sure that we're a bridge between the school and the parents, that let's get them to school-related functions. Do we need to provide transportation to school functions? One thing that we need to look at and we need to be careful of is putting everybody that comes from a one-parent home into the bad parenting section. Because oftentimes, if it's a one-parent home, they're struggling to make ends meet, they're working a job, they're working 2 jobs, and they're working whatever job they have. That could be second shift, first shift, third shift. So just because there's one parent in the home doesn't necessarily make them this parent that's failing their student. The key is that the after-school program and the parent need to work together. If they're working together, that can really help the parent. It helps bring the parent along into more of the monitoring focus, and it melds those 2 resources together into something that actually works. And also gives students an extra time, extra assistance. They need the extra assistance, but the one thing they don't like is to be stigmatized. They don't want to feel like they have to come to this program because they're just terrible students. We want them to come here because learning's fun, because there's a person here that is making a difference in their life. So by removing that stigma, we can be a more successful and a more valuable after-school program. So again, in summary, it's important that the staff models expected behaviors, they problem solve and can complete multiple duties, that we're focused on goals and specific needs of individual students, and really that the after-school program is building a community of trust, that everybody understands what the goals are, everybody understands what the expectations are, and that allows for greater outpouring to parents and schools in working with those factors. So the overall literature review found that, again, poverty is a real issue that affects academic performance. The level of parent education and support plays an important role in academic achievement. It's important to build a network of low-income, a network of support for low-income families. Schools need to hold students accountable. Individual relationships play a huge role in how well the student does. And the after-school program success really depends on its own commitment and expertise to its core values in aligning parents and school involvement. A couple challenges. What the Young Scholar program can't do. We can't change their economic circumstance. We cannot force parents to parent. We can't change the policy and procedures of the school district. So that's are items that we cannot affect as a Young Scholar program. What we can do is We can focus on individual goal setting. We can match students with high-quality, highly trained tutors and mentors. And we can retain appropriate staff that supports and contributes to the shared vision and goals of the Young Scholar Program. So what we wanted to do was we wanted to create an experiment that examined and identified possible solutions to the problem of increasing homework completions. We came up with a list of alternatives and developed a hypothesis and introduced a collection plan. The alternative one was, can we implement weekly student goal meetings? Because currently there are not consistent goal meetings taking place. And this is really a missed opportunity to improve self-esteem through incremental success and sustained academic performance. What we would need were time and administrator. It's just as simple. Set up 15-minute weekly appointments, review the goals, follow up on the goals through the SAM process. This would take an additional 15 minutes of prep time per student for the administrator. So if we're looking at just on a round number, 20 students, we're talking about 300 minutes of just prep time before we actually have the actual goal meeting. So we're talking just 5 hours a week just spent on processing the goals. If we did improved tutor training, we want to recognize the value of the individual relationship. We'd like to give tutors better tools to be more effective. Currently, the training is not formalized, and there's not an effective way in establishing methods to improve the legitimacy of the relationship. To implement this alternative would require a comprehensive development of a training program that included curriculum, guest speakers, and even role-playing. There would be a physical cost if we were to hold an all-day training once or twice a year for our tutors. And we need a trained staff member to deliver the training program and become a point person for tutor needs, questions, or concerns in the future. The last alternative was focused staff development communication, making sure that all the programs have got to relate to the goal and vision of the Young Scholar Program. We need to, meeting attendance and in-service training and job expectation. That's part of the communication, the role of communication in the program. Everybody has to be on the same page. Information needs to be disseminated once, and everybody's clear on what the expectations are. That could include a cost, again, allocating additional resources to make sure meetings and training is attended. It could also come with some tough questions. How do we look at non-revenue, non-outcome producing programs? Again, how does that align with the total goal of the program? And it could also require the raising additional funds. So we came up with 4 hypotheses. Implementing weekly student goal meetings would increase homework completion. Tutor training would increase homework completion. Focusing on staff development would increase homework completion. There is a hypothesis 4, which will just stay the same, the status quo. That hypothesis would prove false if one of the other 3 hypotheses proved to be true. So we came up with a data collection plan. We handed surveys out to students, tutors, and staff. We needed to collect a minimum of 30 responses, including demographic information and specific questions to test. Again, hypothesis 4, we weren't going to test the status quo because if one of the other ones was true, the hypothesis 4 would be rejected. We used a chi-square test, which was a 1 degree of freedom with a 0.05 statistical confidence level, which means we're 95% sure that doing this would increase homework completion rate.